Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Heya, how you doing? And if you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology and maybe you just watched my first episode on the Iliad and you're like, oh, I want to know more. This is so exciting. How does the story continue? Well, then this is not only the perfect video for you, but this is also the perfect channel for you. You guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. But for the topic of today's video, we're going to be going into book 2 of the Iliad. So if I could describe book 2 of the Iliad, it would literally just be the longest list of names ever. Like, genuinely. There is no classicist or nobody who's even read the Iliad, whether you're a classicist or not, who has not read book 2 and thought, oh my god, when does this end? It is so long. It is famous for the Catalogue of Ships. And for that reason, I'm not going to be getting into it because the catalogue is just dull. It is one of those things that you should read because it's just literally a list of names of the people who come to the Battle of Troy, but it's like what boat they're on and who they're with and how many boats they brought from the place that they came. It's dull, okay? It doesn't matter how much you love classics. Reading a list of names and how many boats and how many people and then like a random story about the person's dad, you're just like, what? That's what the Catalogue of Ships in. We're not doing that today. I'm not doing it because it's my channel. I can do whatever I want. So I will summarize the book up until that point. And then you can just go read it. But let's get into the summary of today's book. So last week I left you on the end of book 1, which was that Hera and Zeus had this little fight, but then they go to bed and it's fine. They're not angry. All the gods are in bed. All the men are in bed now. And Zeus has left promising Thetis, who's Achilles' mother, that he will help Achilles gain all this great honor and all this sort of shebang. So at the beginning of this book, when everybody's asleep but Zeus. That's literally what Homer tells us. That Zeus is trying to figure out how he's going to honor Achilles and how he's going to make Achilles great again, for lack of a better phrase. As I was saying it, I was cringing it, but here we go. That's what came out of my mouth. That is sort of where we're at the beginning of this book. So everybody's asleep. Zeus is pacing. He's trying to figure out what to do, and he ends up calling on the god Dream, because that's a specific god in Greece. So Zeus tells him to go down to Agamemnon, who's asleep, and to wake him up and to tell him to get all the army ready to attack Troy. That is his great plan, that he's going to have Agamemnon believe that he's going to take Troy that day, when actually that is absolutely like not what's about to happen. So Dream comes down, taking on the form of Nestor, the old man that I mentioned in the previous book, takes on the form of Nestor, goes to wake up Agamemnon in his tent, who is like dead asleep to the world, okay? Agamemnon is described as being like clouded in like immortal mist of slumber. Like that is how asleep he is, which like we've definitely all been there. We know exactly what kind of sleep he's in. Dream goes in to wake him up, and instead of just being an alarm clock and being like ding ding ding, bitch, wake up, instead Dream goes, a man of your kind of responsibility shouldn't be asleep right now. And you're like, what a way to wake someone up and to make them feel guilty for sleeping. So that's what Dream says, and Dream tells him as well, in the form of Nestor. Remember, we have to remember he looks like Nestor at this point. But he tells Agamemnon, I'm the god Dream, I'm the messenger of Zeus right now, and Zeus told me to tell you that you're going to sack Troy today, and so you need to get everybody ready, right? But this is like the middle of the night. And Agamemnon wakes up, and he's actually pretty fucking excited about it. He's like, yeah, we're going to be successful, this is so great. So he demands a council with the princes. I mean, the princes isn't the right word to use, but I realized in my other video when I kept saying kings, and I constantly say like the kings of Greece, people aren't really getting that, because Agamemnon technically in this moment is the head king, right? So he's the leader of the Greeks into battle, and the other people are still kings. So like Odysseus is still king of Ithaca, but technically in this moment they're like all princes because they are lesser than Agamemnon. So either way, Agamemnon calls a council for all of them. And so they all go to a meeting, and Agamemnon's like, hey, you're never gonna guess what happened to me this morning. I was visited by Dream, who looked just like Nestor. And Nestor's sitting there, mind you. I always wonder what Nestor thinks in this moment, that you find out like a god takes on the form of you. Are you like, oh, that's definitely overstepping a boundary that I didn't consent to? Or was he like, damn, that's pretty cool, I've definitely peaked? I don't know. I'm always wondering, because Nestor is sitting there, we don't get his point of view. But either way. So Agamemnon says, this happened to me. He repeats what Dream had told him about like sacking Troy and being successful and all that sort of stuff. And then he sits down, and Nestor stands up and he says, look, if anybody else had said exactly what you just said, we would have all thought he was crazy. But because you're one of the best fighters, we believe you. Like, don't worry, we think this is a great thing. So we should all go and get our armies together and call together a bigger meeting with all of the armies. And everybody agrees, and so they all disperse from the mini meeting to go and call forth a very large meeting. Now, the god Rumor is described in this moment as helping to spread the word of the fact there's going to be this large Greek meeting. And so rumor helps. Apparently there are like 9 heralds as well that go and like figure out how to get everybody involved, and everybody goes together. This is before daybreak. I just want to highlight that. Like, this is all happening at like, what is the morning part? It's not dusk, because that's in the evening. The twilight is in the evening too. Whatever the hell that bit in the morning when it's still dark outside technically, but like it's daytime. That part of the day, that's when this is happening, okay? The word slips me now. It might come to me in editing. It might be appearing on the screen right now. I have no idea. I might just be asking you guys to leave in the comments. Help me. Daybreak? Is it just called daybreak? That's not the point of this video, regardless. They then call this massive, massive meeting, okay? So all of the Greeks are present, apart from Achilles. Obviously, he's crying in his tent still. Agamemnon gets up in front of all of his men, and he's holding this scepter that I mentioned in the previous book. So he's holding the scepter. This is the scepter of Hephaestus. I was about to stumble over that. This scepter of Hephaestus, we actually get the backstory to it, which I don't know why we need it, but we get it. So I'm going to tell you that this scepter apparently was made by Hephaestus, given to Zeus. Zeus gave it to Hermes. Hermes gave it to this guy called Pelops. If you know Greek mythology, you'll know who he is. If not, it's totally not relevant. He gives it to Pelops, who gives it to Thyestes, who then leaves it to Agamemnon. And that's why Agamemnon is standing in front of the Greeks right now, leaning on the scepter. Just in case you guys wanted to know, that's the history of the scepter of Hephaestus. Now, for a third time, we hear what Dream told Agamemnon, because Dream told Agamemnon, he told it to the princes, now he's telling it to literally all of the Greeks. And so he tells them, this is exactly what the messenger of Zeus told me, just so that we're all on the same page. Agamemnon then decides that this is the moment he's going to test all of the Greeks and their loyalty towards their the whole reason why they're there. He's going to test them. I don't know why he decides to do this, but he does. So he goes off on this spiel where he starts telling us how many Greeks there are and how powerful they are. And he says, he used this metaphor of if the Greek army was split up into groups of 10, right? And each of them had a wine steward, and the one wine steward was a Trojan, then lots of tens of the Greek army would be without a wine steward. That's how many Greeks there are. The fact that they're still there 9 years in is utterly ridiculous if that is a genuine metric. How are the Trojans not Trojans? How are the Trojans not dead? I really shouldn't be filming today, clearly. But either way, this is part of the fun. But because they've been there for 9 years, because they have been unsuccessful for 9 years, Agamemnon, the testing part of this comes out. Agamemnon says, maybe we should just be cutting our losses and we should all just go home. That's what he presents. And a bunch of people, this really backfires, because a bunch of people get up to leave. They're all like, oh, if we can go home, then I'm gonna leave. But again, Athena and Hera are watching from Olympus, and so Hera then hits Athena and is like, go down and make sure that they don't all leave. So she goes down and appears to Odysseus, who's her favorite. She gets down to appear to Odysseus, gets him to stand up and stands by his side as he basically yells at Agamemnon, which is a very interesting method of getting people to stay, but he does it. And he yells that he's a coward, which once again, very, very brave. So he yells that he's a coward, and the whole army like cheer. They're all like, yeah, Agamemnon's a coward, it's totally fine. So he then sits down, and this guy gets up, because remember that there's always this sort of constant. As soon as someone sits down, someone else stands up. So the guy who stands up is this guy called Thersites. Now, Thersites is noted as being hated by Odysseus and Achilles. They both hate him. They think he's a... This is my favorite little cameo from a character because it's just genuinely so bizarre that Thersites stands up. Homer notes that he's hated and then says, oh yeah, and by the way, readers should know he's the ugliest man in Troy. And he goes on to describe what Thersites looks like. And he's not very appealing, I must say, when you read it. But it's just funny that Homer feels like we need to know this detail about him, that physically he's ugly as hell. Like, why? So Thersites gets up. He tells Agamemnon off again, sort of like in the same vein as Odysseus. But he doesn't have the relationship that Odysseus and Agamemnon have, bear in mind. So he gets up, tells Agamemnon off, which is brave. And then he calls all of the Greek men women, basically, which, like, again, rude. Why would you be rude to your king and then rude to literally everybody else in the meeting? And then he tells the Greeks that they should actually just leave Agamemnon there to fight his own battle and that they should all go home, which does not sit well with Odysseus, okay? Because Odysseus already hates him, bear that in mind. So Odysseus then stands up and he says, yo, mate, if you pull any shit like that again, I'm going to strip you naked and whip you until you're running away from the meeting. And everybody starts laughing, but Odysseus literally picks up a scepter and whacks Thersites on the back, so he starts bleeding, and everyone's laughing, and so then Thersites sits down, like he should have done from the beginning. But it's just like a very odd, It shows the dynamic between the Greek army. It shows how this violence was totally normal. It also shows how powerful Odysseus was. It also shows that no one likes Thersites. The fact that everybody is literally laughing at him in this moment. It isn't just Homer saying he's ugly. It's everybody hating him. So at least there's a common enemy within the Greek camp that they can all direct their anger towards. I don't know. It's an odd little episode. I felt like I had to include it. Then Odysseus, being the man of the people that he is, he speaks to the rest of the Greeks as he's still standing. He has Athena with him still. And he tells everybody that he completely understands why they all want to go home. He's like, that makes absolute perfect sense to me. But we cannot leave until we get what we came for, which is Helen, because they've been there for so long. Bear this in mind. They keep saying it. I did not exaggerate, by the way, when I said in my introduction that they will not stop telling you how long they've been there. This is now already it feels like the 100th time, and we're only in book 2 that they're like, we've been here for such a long time, you can't leave. Odysseus takes this time actually to remind us and to remind the Greeks of this prophecy that was in place right before they went to Troy and they sailed to Troy. And there was a nest which had like 8 little baby sparrows in it, and there was a mum which made 9 sparrows in total, little baby ones, and there was a snake, and the snake like sort of slithered over, got into the nest, and it ate all of the baby sparrows, and then it coiled around the mama one, and then it ate that one too. And so then Calchas, because he's a seer, right? Calchas from the previous book, he's a seer, he's been there from the beginning, I told you that. So he then in this moment had interpreted that as being a sign from the gods that that's how many years it would take in order for the Greeks to then get Troy, right? So it would be 9 years of struggle, and then we would then get them on the 10th year. And Odysseus is like, we're so close now, you can't leave. And then the army all shouted approval, because like, when do they not? As Odysseus sits down, as the crowd is cheering, like I said, somebody always has to get up. This time it's old man Nestor. Old man Nestor gets up again, and he's like, hello, you're all children. Because he says that we shouldn't, we, as if I'm part of the army. He says that they shouldn't need that sort of encouragement in order to stay. That he says, without us thinking about how close we are to the end, one, we all made an oath. Like, everybody needs to remember that they made an oath to Menelaus that this is what would happen. So we're all here because of this oath. Don't forget that. 2, we all came here in order to get Helen back, to give her back to Menelaus. So regardless of the oath, this is what we came for. No one is leaving until we get what we came for. That's what Nestor says. He's like, point 2, proven, don't even argue with me. And his last point, which is also a really good point, is that he says that Zeus has already shown them favor. He says Zeus already has shown us that we're probably going to win the war. We just have to stick it out until we win. So you need to push through this really hard time. That's what he says. He says, push through it, get through it, people, because Zeus has already shown us favor. Even though we know as the reader that Zeus is not going to show them favor for the immediate future, we do know that they're going to win. So Nestor sits down to more cheering from the Greek army, and then Agamemnon stands up. He thanks Nestor once again. He always is like, thanks Nestor for being so nice, which I don't know why he's so nice to Nestor, but like, okay. Actually, it's probably because Nestor's way older than him, but either way, not the point of this book. So Agamemnon then stands up, he gives a speech, and he takes literally 0 accountability for him and Achilles' argument, and he says the only reason why I got so mad is because Zeus made me mad, when really there's like Apollo is the one who did that, not Zeus. Maybe Zeus did and we don't have that writing, but according to the Iliad there is absolutely no Zeus intervention in regards to Agamemnon's anger. He's just an angry person, just bear that in mind. But he takes 0 accountability for it. He's like, that's the reason why I was so mad in that moment. He then also tells them that he was tricking them. He says that whole line was a trick, by the way, I was just trying to trust your loyalty, and you failed. So he says that if anybody is going to get on their boat and go back to Greece, then he's going to ensure that they are ripped apart by dogs and vultures, which is always fun. That's great. But that's what he threatens the Greek army with. And obviously, they cheer in approval. When do they not? Like, literally, when do they not? That's and it's just always noted as like the Greek army, no matter what they say, they're like, yeah, sure. Like, they're not listening. I have no doubt they're not listening. They don't really care. So then we have a bunch of main characters who then have to sacrifice an ox to Zeus. So we have Agamemnon, Diomedes, the 2 Ajaxes, Odysseus, and Menelaus. I always forget Menelaus is in there, but Menelaus also does that. And as they're sacrificing this ox to Zeus, they then pray to him and they ask, well, Agamemnon specifically, he asks that he will be aided in killing Hector on that day of battle, and also that he will take Priam's palace. that day as well, which obviously Zeus is ignoring him. Zeus is like, I hear you, and I must say no, that's not the plan that I have for today's battle. But they make this whole feast, and then they end up gearing up for war. And then we go into the Catalogue of Ships, which I'm not going to get into. But that is then when the book goes into the Catalogue of Ships, and it goes through the Greeks, and then it does go through some of the Trojans. So the most important Trojans, like Homer does mention them to you, and their family lines. Bear in mind, we get the character and the family lines, and it's like, this person was from the son of this great man, and blah, blah, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I need to know any of this. And let me tell you, you genuinely don't really need to know any of it. You need to know like the main characters, and like, that's about it. So, yeah. But that is the end of book 2. It's a lot shorter today because I didn't want to go through half of it. Like, genuinely, the list of names is half the book. I didn't want to do it, so that's why we have a shorter episode today. Now, next time we'll be going into book 3, which we finally get to see Helen. This is the first time that we get to see Helen, and we get to see her interact with Paris, which I feel like a lot of people aren't gonna like. I feel like the internet has this idea that Helen and Paris are like star-crossed lovers, and that is not how Homer presents them at all. And book 3 is so funny because we get to see this brutal Helen. Like, really, she is just girl power in a character. It's funny as hell. So I'm super excited to share that with you guys on Thursday this week. But in the meantime, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon, because when you guys interact with this channel, this might sound crazy, but when you subscribe, when you like, when you comment, it all helps with my engagement, and it helps me get paid, which is great because I'm broke as hell. So thank you guys so much for tuning in though. Don't forget to do all the interactions and the content interactions and all that sort of shebang. But yeah, we'll see you next time here on Morning with book 3 of the Iliad. So we'll see you then.